right, everyone, welcome to our Bad Batch episode 4 spoiler review. I believe the episode was called Cornered. This is Movie Changeup podcast. I'm Jill Fricke. I'm with Tristan Mayer, one of the regulars and also co-founders of the normal Movie Changeup podcast. But this is our Bad Batch episode. We come here on every Friday night and review Bad Batch. Tristan, I've said Bad Batch like 10 times now, so what did you think of this episode?
Thought it was a good episode of Bad Batch, Joe. Really good Bad Batch episch. Make sure I say Bad Batch a few more times just to make sure the YouTube algorithm picks us up saying Bad Batch. uh,
Bad Batch.
Bad Batch, Star Wars Bad Batch. But yeah, pretty good one. Not necessarily following or not advancing the plot too much, but it was a fun little adventure throwaway. And just like last week, even though it felt a bit standalone, it has little connected things for characters that moved it forward a bit. So even though it was a little bit of a filler episode here, it still had some nice moments to carry us through to the next one.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. It's a good, solid, somewhat filler of an episode. I think the main plot thing of this episode was them kind of introducing Fennec Shand to this series and kind of her character a little bit is kind of she's like somewhat a bounty hunter, a little bit with a heart of gold, but one of the things I want to say too is after we review each episode, we kind of have a general Star Wars discussion that connects to the episode. Last week, when they had the whole War Mantle name drop, which is in Rogue One, we kind of thought and talked about what we thought some of the other names of those folders in Rogue One would mean. This week, we're talking about what live action characters we'd like to see in animation and what animated characters we'd like to see in live action. So if you hear our Bad Batch review and you're kind of tired of our Bad Batch review, just stick around that we're going to talk about some more stuff beyond Bad Batch. So yeah, I thought this was a good solid episode that introduced us to Fennec Shand and getting to see more of her.
Yeah, not much else to it there, but it was a nice kind of introduction to her because I wasn't sure. Initially, I thought, oh, she's going to be like a one episode, maybe 2 episode character, but it seems to me that they're setting her up to be a reoccurring villain, at least for a few episodes here. Because she's not exactly wrapped up by the end of the episode. They leave you kind of hanging on the question of, like, oh, who hired her? Is she coming back? So it could have been a filler episode, but the fact that they're bringing her back for a few more makes me feel a little bit better about it. Like, it wasn't a huge waste of time. You're getting the first look at this character that's going to be a bit of a bigger character going forward.
Yeah, one thing I will say, I know we normally save theories and speculation to the end, but I am very much cooling down on my Darth Maul is going to appear in Bad Batch theory, at least for season 1, because I feel like if he was going to, we would have got some hint of it by now. So I will say, unless Fennec Shand is working directly for Crimson Dawn, then I will say that Darth Maul will not be in at least season 1 of the Bad Batch. But I have my theory of who she was talking to towards the end, but we can save that towards the end for our theories and discussion.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and save that. I didn't take as many notes as normal because it was a bit of a straightforward episode. It was just sort of the adventure of the week, but there were a couple moments I wrote down that I wanted to cover if you want to go ahead and get onto the notes here.
Yeah, we can do that.
So it's essentially a supply run episode. We've seen these a lot in the shows where they're like an excuse to get the characters onto a certain planet and off again by the end of the episode. But this time they're trying to get some kind of something at I don't even remember what they're trying to get. I just wrote down supply run because that's all I really need to know is they're going to this planet to pick something up. But I thought it was interesting when they first land, you come and you see them kind of like cheering on the Empire. They're like, oh, look, we're finally getting saved at the end of the war, and normally we saw like in the previous episode, the Empire is very like threatening presence in a planet where they don't really want them there, and they came and they kind of disrupted the way of life and took it over. But this is the first time in the show, at least, we've seen like people be happy to be under the Empire. People are like, oh look, finally we're at peace now. We're not getting stuck in the middle of this conflict. We're not in the middle of some kind of war that doesn't have anything to do with us. You imagine like the guy on the ground doesn't have much to do with the Separatists versus the Republic kind of battle, and now they're just happy to have it be over with. So what do you think of this introduction scene where you see people actually cheering for the stormtroopers in the Empire?
Yeah, I think it directly ties into Padme's line towards the end of Revenge of the Sith of "So this is how liberty dies" with thunderous applause. Like that's immediately what I went to when I saw them cheering for the Empire, and I think it's kind of a fun like juxtaposition of Rebels and episode 4, kind of, where people are against the Empire and hate the Empire, and they're all like downtrodden and sad and miserable. And I think we're gonna see more, depending on how many seasons this show goes. I think we'll see more and more of that, of like, season 1, early season 2, maybe all of season 2, the Empire's around, people are happy and excited. We get to like season 4, season 5, I think it's going to be a lot more of like sad depression of the Empire.
That's what I'm thinking too. By the time they get to the point where there's going to be a rebellion, you get like the people didn't realize what they're getting into. They're like, in the first few episodes here, they're like, oh, it's a regime change. It's something different. It might not be perfect, but it's whatever. It's the Republic, it's the Empire. What's the difference? That's the kind of idea we're getting from a lot of the characters here. So, and then once you get to the point, like you said, in New Hope, where they're people ready to rebel, you really get that change in tone from people who are not just seeing this as one new leader, but as like an oppressor that they have to stop. So I think that's something that'll be fun to see, the growth between this and, like you said, Rebels, where they're much more downtrodden and under the boot of the Empire more.
Yeah. Or like Jyn Erso, just like her famous quotable line, "I rebel."
Yep, one of the best lines that was not in the movie. You can tell when that trailer came out, they were so proud of that line, and they were like, "Oh, never mind, let's get around that one."
See, I fully think that was a trailer line if they specifically recorded that for the trailer, because I know the shot of her in the tunnel was supposedly recorded solely for the trailer too.
Yeah, well,
but that's Rogue One.
That's Rogue
Bad
One.
Batch discussion.
This is Bad Batch. It's connected in some ways, probably more than not in some situations, but one thing that I mentioned, and that actually does connect to Rogue One a bit, is that we're seeing our main characters here kind of really bend the rules of the galaxy. Like, especially in this episode, the Empire is not really the bad guys, just more like the Bad Batch are the ones breaking the rules. The Bad Batch are the ones kind of like intimidating someone into. We have the moment where they're convincing Echo, or they're convincing a dealer that Echo's a robot, and they're a droid. Sorry, in Star Wars lingo, it's droid, and they're selling Echo to this dealer. So we're seeing a bunch of moments in this first act here where the Bad Batch is sort of bending the rules, whether it's intimidating that guy not to search their ship, whether it's lying to their dealer and saying, "Oh, this is a robot, we're gonna steal him back and take your 2,000 credits or 3,000 credits." We're seeing our main characters really start to bend the rules to survive while they're out on their own here.
Yeah, I really like that. It kind of sucked that they were screwing that random guy over. He didn't really do anything wrong. Like the one guy that owned the yard, where they were like, "Oh, we'll pay you money," and looked the other way, and then he immediately sold them out. I don't care that guy maybe got screwed over. Fuck that guy. But the like random dealer just trying to make a living, like, they kind of sucked for him. He didn't do anything wrong.
That guy didn't do much. He's just trying to make his living on this Empire-run planet,
Yeah. I will say I thought for sure, because they do have the Gonk droid that's just like there on the ship that really plays no part in the show. I thought they were definitely gonna, I wouldn't say steal one of the droids, but I thought one of the droids would like stow away on their ship and just become part of the show.
That would have been interesting, because they do need like a droid character still. They don't have one of those kind of comic relief kind of side characters.
I mean, they do have. I think what they did is like Wrecker is like their comic relief side character, and then anytime they need like a droid to do anything, they have Echo. So I don't know if the show necessarily needs a droid, I guess, thinking about it, but when I saw all those droids and them going towards the ship, my immediate thought was like, okay, one of those droids is staying and being part of the show. But apparently not.
Apparently not. We've already got enough people on the Bad Batch, We got to kill off at least one before we start adding more.
Yeah, R.I.P. Wrecker.
There was a moment, we're jumping ahead a bit, but when Wrecker's the one that for a second saves Omega in the tunnels, I had a moment of fear where I thought, oh god, this is the moment where Echo's Wrecker's chip's gonna come back on. He's gonna betray Omega. Now that they've established that tiny little thing last week, it's like every moment with Wrecker and Omega, I had this little tinge in my head of like, oh god, this is gonna be it. It's gonna twist right here, and he's gonna give her up.
Part of me has like this slight feeling that they're gonna Game of Thrones season 1 us, where we think Tracker is the main character of this show, and he's the one whose Order 66 chip activates, and they have to kill him, or he sacrifices himself, and end of season 1, it's Tracker that dies.
That would be interesting. I would like that, honestly. I think this show is on the edge too now in the first season, where I'm wondering, like, okay, how far is it gonna go? How
There
dark
are
is it gonna go?
there are some dark moments. Like, they are killing random civilians. Like, there were moments in that chase scene where I keep wanting to call her Zam Wessel, but from Attack of the Clones, but Fennec Shand shoots a random guy, or I think he might have been a cop. But still, like, a guy just out doing his job, not involved at all, shoots him through the windshield of his speeder, and you see the blaster wound in his chest, and he just flies off of his speeder. And I'm like, is this supposed to be a kid's show? Because right now it does not feel like a kid's show.
Yeah, this is definitely getting quickly into that like late season Clone Wars kind of darkness, where the main characters are just killing people.
Yeah.
Especially with Fennec Shand. Obviously, she's the bad guy of the episode, but she's not like an entirely a bad character
No,
in
like,
the overall scheme of Star Wars. You know, she's someone that they root for in other shows.
Yeah, there was a moment where she, like, dropped Omega, and she was like tuck and roll, and that was like a moment, very much a moment of allowing Omega to live, even if it meant she got away.
Yeah, we're getting these moments where Fennec Shand is humanizing a little bit.
Yeah.
And we know in Mandalorian that she starts off as a villain character, but she's kind of grows into a bit of like a ally by the end of the second season. So I think we'll get some growth for her in this, assuming that she comes back for at least 1 or 2 more episodes. We'll probably get a couple of those scenes between her and Omega. I think they built that connection up a bit this week, where when we see her again, in maybe a less stressful situation, they might have like a mother-daughter kind of or relationship, maybe like a role model type relationship, similar to Maul and Ezra, maybe from Rebels, where she's like the bad girl on Omega's shoulder a little bit.
Yeah, and one thing I was gonna ask too. So Omega gave her the offer of becoming part of the Bad Batch. Do you think that offer will ever come up again? Do you think there's a potential, if any of the Bad Batch were to die, that Fennec Shand will be the one to kind of take their place?
I don't think she's gonna fail the team necessarily. I think the offer will come back. It'll be like that thing where it's like, oh, maybe you can join us, and then she says, no, sorry, kid, I work alone, that kind of thing. I don't think that she's too much of like a legacy character to bring in, and I think we've already talked about how there's a bit too much of like a Mandalorian feel to some of this stuff, even in this episode, where it's like Omega is like the MacGuffin of everybody's trying to come and get Omega, so now we have a bounty hunter coming after her, and that, I think if you end up bringing Fennec Shand, who's a character on Mandalorian, onto this show, it'll feel even more so like a Mandalorian kind of ripoff. So I think they probably will veer away from that, but I do think the offer will come back up and she'll turn it down in the next episode or two when she comes back.
One of the things I'm curious about is because animation takes a lot longer to do than live action, so part of me wonders, where did Fennec Shand originate? Did she originate in Bad Batch and they put her in Mandalorian, and because, you know, live action is quicker to film and release, it just came out first? Or, you know, was she in the Mandalorian scripts first and they also put her in Bad Batch?
My prediction is that she was in Mando first, because they brought Ming-Na Wen back from the show to the voice, you know, and I think that's a bit of a big name.
She was in season 1.
The voice character. Yeah, she was in that one episode of season 1.
I forgot. She was in season 1. Okay, yeah, that fits then.
And I could imagine maybe her coming back for season 2 was coordinated with this show, where they said, okay, we're gonna have her in Mandalorian and we're also gonna have her in Bad Batch. It was sort of like a simultaneous decision to have this crossover character, because we'll talk about it even later in the episode, that they're having a lot of crossover between these two in different styles to the universe. You know, there's some animated characters that are showing up in the Mandalorian, that are showing up in the movies, that are showing up in other stuff. So I think that was probably a coordinated thing, that, oh, she's going to be in season 2 of Mando, so let's put her in season 1 of Bad Batch also. And she'll be, of course, in Book of Boba Fett too.
Yeah, I think she's going to be a big part. I think she's going to be like a main cast member of Book of Boba Fett. Like, I think she's going to be in every episode.
That's what I'm thinking. 1 or 2 episodes here, and then a pretty big character of Boba Fett.
Yeah, I think she'll... Yeah, we can wait for predictions. I was going to ask how much of a role do you think she's going to play moving forward in this season, but we can...
Yeah, more than I expected, but yeah, we'll get to that a bit towards the end here. I want to talk a bit because in this whole plan here, Echo is not like super present as a character. I'm starting to buy into a theory maybe that Echo isn't long for this world as a team member.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot less present of him in this episode early on, where he has his role in the plot, I guess, like as a plot device, literally. But I don't know. I'm starting to buy into maybe that he's the one that gets knocked off by the end of the season because
Yeah.
I'm wondering maybe if this season is not gonna be without the death of at least one Bad Batch member.
Yeah, I just think with the fact of D. Bradley Baker voicing all of them, cutting one of them doesn't mean you have to fire anybody or anyone goes away. And I just think it's very possible one of them dies. And if I were to rank order in which they die, as much as I said, oh, what if it's Game of Thrones season 1 and Hunter dies, my ranking is Wrecker 1, Crosshair 2, Echo 3, Tech 4, Hunter 5.
Interesting. Yeah,
And
I think
Omega-
Crosshair's
Omega
definitely towards
is-
the top there.
Omega is plot armor. Omega will not die. She might go back to Camino or might go off and live her own life, but she's not gonna die.
That would be a big twist. I don't think the show's dark enough to kill off Omega.
Yeah.
But you never know.
What if her age acceleration is like 4 times faster than everyone else's, or like 5 times faster, or 6 times faster, or something, and she's literally like 2 months old?
Yep, she comes back next season and she's played by she's like middle age or something.
Yeah.
She's kind of the plot device of the episode here. She's the one that kind of kicks off the action by getting lost in this planet and chased by the bounty hunter. She's sort of like, especially in this episode, but even in the last episode, she's been used a lot as like the device that gets the plot moving, and the not necessarily damsel in distress, but the one that needs to be rescued still. You know, she's cold her own, but she's still the one that the plot needs to kind of revolve around.
But the plot was a different structure this episode because it wasn't everyone else failed at their job and Omega had to step in at the end and save everybody. Like, this is not that. So I'm okay with the overall plot of this episode.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that much of a retread because I was worried about that. Like, oh, another Omega-centric episode. I wonder if people are going to start getting a little tired of Omega being like the forefront of the focus here, or the Bad Batch show that's not really seeming to be about the Bad Batch all that much.
Yeah.
But they did it all right this episode. I like that. Like I said, she's not entirely a damsel in distress. She's able to hold her own even up against Fennec Shan. She's able to kind of escape and use her wits to keep herself alive and keep herself afloat.
Yeah.
And they're doing a good job with Omega, I think, and not making her too much of like a one-note character that needs to be saved, or one that is so independent and so unprotectable that, you know, she's just like unrealistically good at fighting or something like that. You always wonder, like, when this new child character is gonna fight Fennec Shan and like win.
Yeah.
But they did a good job making it believable that she's like barely a step ahead of her and kind of keeping herself afloat barely on this chase.
Yeah. Yeah, she's more... Yeah, it was never unbelievable. Like, everything was more... It was like Home Alone logic. Like, if you can buy into Home Alone, you can buy into this.
I'm curious a little bit on your thoughts of this planet, too. It reminded me a bit... It gave me vibes of Batu. For a second, I was like, did I miss it? And we're actually at Batu?
No, I know
the
this...
planet from Galaxy's Edge.
This planet was in an episode of Clone Wars.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. I'm gonna look it up. Pantora Star Wars. This episode was in an episode of Clone Wars. I have to find it.
But there were definitely vibes from some of those hallways and things of what it was like to walk around in the Black Spire Outpost. You know, how you had these little tiny shops sticking around that were selling the little bit trinkets and their theme aliens walking around and that kind of stuff. It gave me... Because that's kind of what Batu goes for, and that park goes for Galaxy's Edge. Is just like, you're at this random outpost in the Star Wars universe, and you're just walking around. So this felt like very much in the world of that. Yeah,
basically it's an Ahsoka-centric episode. That's where it's from. It's technically actually a moon and not a planet, even though sometimes it is referred to as a planet. So I wonder if it's one of those situations where the planet it spins around is, dead or desolate, and you can't really like live there, but you can live on the moon. So people just kind of refer to the moon as a planet, even though it's not.
Like Endor.
Yeah. Which Endor technically not the name of. No, we've never actually seen Endor because it's the moon of Endor, but people can't listen when they watch a movie, so they think that's a place called Endor when it's not. We don't know what that place is called. It's a moon of Endor.
Yeah, we gotta be very specific in our Star Wars lore. People will correct us in the comments if we're even slightly wrong.
Yep, so I'm that dick.
My people will correct us. I mean, Joe will correct us. He'll go in there and get mad and say,
Yeah.
"Guys, technically, it's the moon of Endor."
Yep, for sure.
What did you think of the relationship here between Fennec, Shan, and Omega? We mentioned it a little bit earlier, but they have a slightly playful relationship a bit, but not quite.
One of the things I was thinking on my rewatch, and I was thinking about a little bit while I was at work today, was if the Bad Batch wasn't as good as they are, and Fennec Shand was able to get Omega and take her back to who I think she was talking to, I think we very much could have had a Din Djarin Grogu situation of before she gets her back to where she's supposed to go. Fennec Shand has like a realization of like the plans that they have for this girl probably not the best, and so it's more of like a mother-daughter type on the run. But the Bad Batch got her back, defeated Fennec Shand, and that wasn't able to happen. But that's my thought process.
I'm still wondering maybe in a future episode if we'll have some kind of falling out between Omega and the Bad Batch. Maybe they'll have some conflict over how much they're letting her be freer versus being checked and that kind of stuff. Like typical drama, and then maybe that'll be the moment where Fennec Shand returns and maybe Omega leaves voluntarily or something like that and goes away with Fennec Shand, and that's like the arc we get when Fennec returns. But it's a bit of a prediction. I just think I was surprised to see their relationship play out how it did in this episode, where they have that bit of that moment where they say "bro" and you hit the ground type thing, and I'm sure that wasn't a one-off moment. I'm sure that's there for when she returns. They're gonna follow up on that, and I think continue to build that relationship. And I wouldn't be surprised to see her turn, even just like a moment of anger, away from the Bad Batch and joining Fennec Shand.
Yeah, I could definitely see a moment of someone like Tech or Echo who doesn't have the best relationship. Well, Tech, because Tech says a lot of dumb shit that's like kind of dickish, where Tech says something about Omega slowing them down, or maybe they couldn't take a job because they had to, watch over Omega, and Omega hears Tech saying some bullshit, and she gets mad and upset, and boom, here, Fennec Shand is there to welcome Omega with open arms.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. They have that relationship where she's kind of like not treating her like a kid, giving her the respect she thinks she deserves as like a powerful person and as a leader, as someone that can hold her own in these fights.
Yeah.
And if she ever has a moment where the Bad Batch isn't giving her that level of respect and is treating her too much like a kid, I could see her turning against him a bit for a moment.
Yeah.
And I have just the last question written down here. The one that the show kind of leaves us hanging on here is who hired Fennec Shand? I didn't necessarily think it was going to be a question they wanted us to ask, but now they're making it a question. So what do you think?
I think it's one of two. Wishful thinking, hopeful thinking is it's Crimson Dawn, whether it's what's-his-face's character, Vision, whose name I'm blanking on.
Paul Bettany.
Yeah, Paul Bettany, whose name I forget in Solo. Because I'm fucking bad with names. Or
Maul. It's Solo. I forgot everything about Solo pretty much, so I don't blame you.
Whatever. His character from Solo or Maul, or just like the Kaminoans. I don't think it's the Empire, because I'm 99% sure the Empire doesn't know that Omega exists, because they said that in episode 1 of Flit. The Empire thinks Echo is part of the original 5 Bad Batch members, when really it's, the 4 plus Omega are the original 5. So, I think I think it's definitely the Kaminoans or potentially Maul slash what's his Dryden Voss. There we go. Maul and Dryden Voss working for the Kaminoans.
Yeah, because initially my thought was, oh, the Kaminoans hired her, but when they make it a question at the end, it makes me wonder, like, they're probably going to do more than just the Kaminoans did it, because that's the obvious answer. Like, that's what I kind of assumed from the premise of the episode. So if they're making it a question, it makes me think they're probably going to go a little bit out of the ordinary with it. So I'm leaning toward Crimson Dawn. I think maybe not Maul himself, but I do think it'll be Quinlan Voss. I think he said his name was.
Dryden Voss.
Well,
Quinlan
Dryden
Voss
Voss.
is is a Jedi. You know.
They can't even come up with more than one last name.
It could be Quinlan
Come on.
Voss. It could be Quinlan Voss because he is still alive post Order 66.
That could be Quinlan Voss. That would be a twist.
Just had an
But
idea. All right, we'll save that for later.
I do think that that would be a good, because they wouldn't make it the Kaminoans if they made it a question at the end. That's too much of an easy answer. There isn't really a twist there, So I could see it being Crimson Dawn, but not necessarily Maul. Maybe it's just Crimson Dawn, and we get that hint of, oh, Maul is actually involved in this plot tangentially, so they can come back in season 2, season 3.
Yeah,
but if you get a Quinlan Vaughn, or you get a Crimson Dawn appearance, you get that little bit of a setup here. That could be exciting.
Because it makes me wonder how much did Maul know when it came to Order 66 and everything with the clones? Like, because timeline-wise, he was around when the clone army was ordered. So how much did he know? How much was he ever like a go-between between Sidious and the Kaminoans to the point that he knew Omega existed? And if she is a Force-sensitive clone, was that potentially like he knew about it and he neglected on purpose to tell Sidious that the Kaminoans are working on a Force-sensitive clone? The Republic falls. He's not 100% sure what's going on, but he has an idea where a Force-sensitive, ultimate fighting machine is. Probably would attract Maul, so I could see where he might, try to go after it. But I could also very easily just be like, oh, you have to remember this is a show for 12-year-olds, and like they try to make an air of mystery, but turns out it's Kaminoans.
That's true. It is a show for kids, so what I think is a twist might not necessarily work for kids.
Yeah, like to a 12-year-old it might be a big shock. Oh my god, the Kaminoans are trying to find Omega, where us at like, mid to late 20s are like, yeah, kind of duh.
Yeah.
Oh, one of the things I was thinking, I had just remembered now. So, the Kaminoans in the last episode said they had a plot to lure the Bad Batch back, right? So what if they hired Fennec Shand to go after Omega, knowing Fennec Shand would lose, but it would make the Bad Batch feel nervous and feel like they couldn't protect Omega, so where do they take Omega? Right back to the Kaminoans, being like, we can't protect her, someone's coming after her, you need to watch her. And the Kaminoans are like, thanks, great, we'll get on that.
Yeah, we'll do that for you guys, if it helps.
Yeah, because I don't think they necessarily, like, the Bad Batch doesn't see the Kaminoans as the bad guys, right? Like, Omega just kind of left with them, and they were like, sure. I could be wrong.
Yeah, they haven't really gotten to the point where they see the Kaminoans as bad. So I do wonder there's going to have to be a turning point where the secret plot of the Kaminoans becomes a bit more known, not just to us, but to the Bad Batch. They need to get an idea of the stakes of their deal here with Omega.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my theory if it's not Crimson Dawn, that's what I think it is that the Kaminoans hired Fennec Shand to essentially drive the Bad Batch and Omega back to Kamino.
Yeah, my thought is it's probably going to be Crimson Dawn's where I'm leaning, but I'm not going to say probably them. It's probably someone.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
You're like 51, 49.
Yeah. I'm also thinking it could be Sidious, because I know at this point he's been looking for Force-sensitive children, and we know he's going to be sending in the Inquisitors in a few years, and even back in the Clone Wars, he had a whole thing of looking for Force-sensitive kids. So I could see it being a twist of, it's not the Kaminoans, it's like the Empire himself who's beginning a secret mission to take on these Children of the Force type things. So that could be where they go for it. It's a slight twist. It's not exactly who you think it's gonna be. Where it's not the Kaminoan. It's not just like the Empire. It's the Emperor himself on the secret mission. So that could be where they go with it. We haven't
Yeah.
seen the when we saw the Empire in the first episode. We haven't seen him like in the flesh really in this show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm leaning towards Crimson Dawn, but we'll see.
All right. I wouldn't hate it. They're my second pick of who I think it actually is. I'm like 70% Camino, 30% Okay, I'm 65% Camino, 30% Crimson Dawn, 5% somebody else.
We'll find out soon, I'm sure, because they
Yeah.
definitely set it up for her to be returning sooner than later. You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't one of those things like, oh, we'll see
Yeah,
her
this
in
is
2 seasons. You know,
I'm thinking more we'll see her next episode than we won't see her until next season. Like it's more likely we see her next episode than not until next season.
yeah, I definitely think we get maybe 1 or 2 episodes between then and now, but I definitely think within 4 or 5 episodes she's back,
Yeah.
and we've gotten this answer to this question.
Yeah. The vibe I'm getting is she'll be somewhat antagonistic for 1 or 2 more. I would say 2 more episodes this season, and then she'll be an ally in either the penultimate episode or the season finale. In some way, she will help them in either the penultimate episode or the season finale.
Yeah, I wonder maybe we'll see her and Crosshair do his turns in the same episode. You know,
Yeah.
it could be that kind of thing where these characters you think are bad and destined for one way, or because in Star Wars you have these moments of hope where characters can turn and see the good in something and become good themselves. So Fennec Shan, let's think is gonna become like a good guy, but
Do you
we know
think-
by the time we get to Mando, she at least has some good in her. You know.
Yeah. Do you think we'll have a opening moments of Terminator 2 Judgment Day where we have, Omega is essentially John Connor, and we have the T1 or the T1000 and the T whatever the fuck Arnold Schwarzenegger was. And they're both looking for John Connor, aka Omega, and one of them's like Crosshair or Fennec Shand, and the other one's maybe a new character. And we think the new character's there to defend Omega, but then Fennec Shand or Crosshair takes that character out to defend Omega. Do you think we get a moment like that? Because
I love a moment like that. That'd be pretty dope. I think it would be awesome to see, even if it's like Crosshair and Fennec Shand fighting or something like that. I would just love to see more Fennec Shand. I didn't think I was super into the character coming in. I thought, oh, it's gonna be like just that one-off episode where it's like, oh, here's our special episode of the week where Fennec Shand shows up and learns a lesson. But it seems like she's set up for more episodes, so I'm looking forward to seeing more from her. And I think it's exciting to see these connective characters that are small roles in one thing and small roles in another thing. So you don't necessarily have to watch this to get Book of Boba Fett or something like that. But when you do, you're gonna have this extra little excitement where you've seen her on this adventure a few years beforehand, where you've seen like what she's like in action.
Yeah. And also T800, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator.
There you go,
Wow.
the T800 and the T1000.
Yeah, I love Crosshairs like the T800, and then like a new character come in as like the Arnold, and you think they're after Omega, and Crosshairs there to defend Omega, and you think Crosshair's there to take her out, and then boom, it's a switcheroo. Crosshair defends
That'd be pretty
Omega.
good. Maybe other characters, Maul.
Yeah, but if Maul's coming in, I'm not buying him as the good guy here to defend Omega.
Yeah, like Maul's here to save
What
the
if
day.
it's what if it's Mace Windu who's there to who's gone to the dark side?
Oh wow, that would be the reveal.
You see Mace Windu's in danger, Crosshair's coming after her, and then you see Mace Windu and Crosshair both looking for Omega, and then Mace Windu draws his lightsaber, goes to swing it. You think he's gonna swing it at Crosshair, goes to swing it at Omega, and Crosshair shoots him in the fucking face.
Could be Obi-Wan, set it for the show. It turns out Obi-Wan's a bad guy now.
Yeah, I don't know. Unsubscribe.
That would be a pull. I don't know about that. I'm trying to defend Disney the best I can these last couple of years. They've had a rough run, but that would be a bit of a too big of a risk for me to be defending here.
Yeah. Mace Windu going to the dark side and doing all that, I could see though.
I mean, yeah, I don't know how much they're gonna do reveals that big on this animated show that they aren't even advertising.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the appeal of it. You know, they could post something big like that randomly one week, and all of a sudden, people are tweeting about Bad Batch, tweeting about Mace Windu, tweeting about whatever, and then it gets people
Yeah.
to watch. You know?
Yeah. Well, they did put out a thing. Disney put out a thing like a week or two ago of like characters that people thought were dead. It was like a montage of like different Star Wars characters, but they were all characters that were like the fans thought were dead and came back. It was like Maul, Boba Fett, um, what's her face, from the sequel trilogy.
Ray.
No, the Gwendolyn Christie's Captain Phasma.
Captain Phasma.
Captain
Yes.
Phasma. There was another one too, and then Mace Windu was in that montage too. And every single one of those characters were characters that like died on screen and then came back. And so people are like, "Wait, is there like a plan in place for Mace Windu like to come back alive?" Turns out Mace
Or are they
Windu.
just teasing us?
Yeah, Mace Windu, the main antagonist of Bad Batch.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see Mace Windu back. If all, I mean, that'd be such a random pull to bring up in something like
Yeah.
this. I don't know about this show. Maybe he'll be in Mandalorian or Obi-Wan or something like that. But it would be a fun pull. I think Samuel L. Jackson was like such a waste in those prequel movies. You know, you have such a great actor,
Yeah.
such a dynamic and kind of engaging actor, and you're having him play such a boring character.
Yeah.
That's all I've got for this episode, though. Do you have any final thoughts as we wrap up?
No,
Pretty simple plot.
I think we pretty much covered everything that we needed to cover about this episode. I think any idea predictions at all about what next week's episode will be, because I really don't have much. I think it's gonna be them maybe doing like going on some kind of mission to get more credits, but that's about it.
Yeah, I could see them doing their first kind of mercenary mission at this point because they've spent a lot of money this episode getting what they needed and getting out of that problem. So I could see them. We've been talking about them being mercenaries, and we haven't gotten that yet.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that kind of. What is their state of the galaxy? What are they doing day to day? A bit kind of like a slow down episode,
Yeah.
where we see like how are they managing this and what are their. I would like to see some character moments too, like some interactions between Omega and Echo and Omega and some of the characters we haven't gotten a ton of time with.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of on the run kind of stuff, so it would be fun to just get a second to catch up on the characters, catch up on how they're feeling about it, maybe get some more Crosshair scene. When it was so without Crosshair, and then maybe next episode he's back again, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
it. I'm into the show so far. I like this episode, even if it was just a bit of a slower filler episode. It had good moments I liked a lot, so I can't wait for the next one.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm ready to move on to our next discussion that kind of covers a bigger idea of Star Wars, and with Fennec Shand coming from Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett to the Bad Batch coming from live action to animation, we wanted to talk about what are some other characters we'd love to see come from live action to animation, and then we'll probably transfer to what animated characters we'd love to see in live action. So Tristan, I'll let you kick it off. Any live action characters you'd love to see come into animation?
Yeah, I was thinking about this a bit because there's a few that I think would make fun a crossover, and then a few that I also think would make like interesting and relevant kind of crossover. So I tried to narrow it down, but I think mostly it's time to start bringing in some sequel characters into this stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's the same way that the Clone Wars and to an extent Rebels was able to turn the prequel movies into something that people didn't like into something people did by using the characters well and expanding their arcs and giving us time we didn't necessarily get in the movies. And I think a character that could benefit a lot from that is Maz Kanata. I'm not sure if she was in Resistance or not, but my Resistance like barely counts as a as an animated show.
The only ones I can remember being in what I remember of Resistance are Poe, Captain Phasma, and people can watch this and blame Disney for coming up with like non-memorable Star Wars character names. It's also mostly just garbage with names, but Ginger guy, that guy,
The spy from
I'm the spy. Yeah, that guy. He was in a couple episodes. Yeah, him, Phasma, and Poe.
Maz Kanata will be fun for me because she has that kind of like worldly look to her character. Like she's been around the block a few times. You know, she has this history with a lot of different kind of underworld type characters. I think it'd be a place I could see the Bad Batch stopping off for an episode about Katana's temple or something like that, and just getting like a nice adventure with her. Maybe she hires him on for some kind of job, and we get like a one-off thing of Maz Kanata. And she
Yeah.
had that line in Force Awakens, like, "Oh, a good story for another time," you know. And I
Yeah.
think it's time, give us that good story. Let us see what Maz Kanata was up to at this point in the galaxy. Maybe you don't explain the hand thing, or maybe not the hand thing, the lightsaber thing. The hand thing is in the comic books, totally different storyline. But yeah, I would like to see Matana show up. I think she could fit into this world pretty well. She has the underworld history, but she also has that kind of slightly kiddie look to her, the alien aesthetic, and I think she'd fit perfectly into the Bad Batch world. So that's my hope for a crossover character. I would love to see Matana. I'd also like Cobb Vanth. He's only had the one episode in Mandalorian, but I loved it. He kind of blew me away in that episode. I would like to see him come back for another one-off here.
Yeah. My So yeah, Maz Kanata technically was an animation because I know Disney did like those shorts thing for a while, but I don't really count it because it's not like a show or like an animated movie or anything. But so I'm not like, oh, your pick's bad because it's like we saw it for like 10 seconds. But if you don't know the suit or the costume or whatever that Princess Leia wears in Return of the Jedi to sneak into Jabba's palace, she got from Maz Kanata.
Ooh, interesting. That says canon now.
Yeah, that's canon.
Okay,
So
that's in the animated show. Their little short thing.
yeah, their little
Force of
short.
Destiny, whatever it
It's
is.
called like Forces of Destiny that they like focused on like the women in Star Wars and stuff.
Interesting choice to make.
But like I'm fine with because they established in the Force Awakens that Han and Maz were old friends, so I imagine at some point Leia and her crossed paths. When I saw it, I'm like, oh okay, like it wasn't like what those two characters interacted. I'm like, oh, it makes
That's a very
sense.
Star Wars thing to do. They're like, let's figure out a way to shoehorn this in and be like, well, there was a line where
Yeah.
she said this thing, so it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. So for me, my two things. So I feel like a lot of the is that all the ones you had or
That's pretty much all I had. I would
yeah.
love to see a Snoke appearance somewhere
Yeah.
in the world of this,
Yeah.
but I think that's more of a Mandalorian thing
Yeah.
than an animated thing.
So for me, the two animated shows I want the most are number one. I want like 3-4 seasons on like the rise, the prime and the fall of Crimson Dawn. That's what I want. I think number one with Maul being a big central focus. I think it would work best in animated. I'd like a relatively darker tone. I think the tone of the Bad Batch would work fine for something like that. And so with that, you'd get Kira and stuff like that in animated, animation form. Technically, Dryden Voss, we got, in the background of a scene in Clone Wars season 7 in animation, but we get him too. So I'd want that show. And then you were saying sequel. One of the shows that I think would help people with their thoughts on Luke in episode 8 is because we never saw Prime Luke. We saw Luke become Prime Luke in Return of the Jedi, and then we saw post Prime Luke in technically 7 too, but we saw post Prime Luke in episode 8. And I think if we saw Prime Luke, even if it's in an animated show, I think it would help, show the juxtaposition of like how far he's fallen in episode 8. And I think a show that's like called like Jedi Academy or Luke's Academy or something, that the first episode is Han and Leia dropping Ben Solo off, and the final episode of the series is Ben attacking the temple, and like the whole show, and you can foreshadow it and you can have like those moments, and people say, oh, it won't work because like he's going to the dark side. Like to me, Clone Wars worked, and you knew the entire time that Anakin was gonna fall to the dark side. And I think you could, because there's no war going on, you can have a different tone of the show. I almost think you could go more of like an Indiana Jones type feel, where they're not like one central location, and it's him and Luke and whatever other students going on missions, and finding artifacts and going into Sith temples, going into Jedi temples. I think they could be kind of a fun thing. You could introduce Snoke that way. I know you said save Snoke for Mandalorian, but I think you could introduce Snoke there in that show, as maybe he hears about Luke's temple, and he, passes through, and maybe has an episode where he gives advice, and Luke kind of says like, "Hey, appreciate you coming by, but I think you'd best if you just kind of went your own way." So I think that'd be kind of the fun way you'd get Ben Solo in animation, who I think technically was in Resistance, but we saw Kylo Ren in animation. We didn't see Ben Solo.
I would like that a lot. I think that's, like you said, it's a big gap to fill in that moment of Luke doing that training and raising the people in that fall. Like, that's the whole storyline I think people expected to see in the sequels, and I think a lot of the disappointment out of Last Jedi and the sequels in general is that it wasn't what they thought the story was. They didn't get necessarily what they were going and thinking they were going to get, and there was this whole interesting backstory that they could have told the story about, but instead they were focusing on this time when Luke was a hermit and these characters that we didn't know. And I can understand why, as an audience member, if you wanted to see that storyline play out and you didn't get it, why that would be frustrating. So I think even just like a mini series, something like that, where it's like, oh, we're gonna give you like a 10-episode thing of the rise and fall of Luke's academy and the downfall of Kylo Ren, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that could be really interesting. I know they've done a bit of development on Kylo Ren and Snoke in the comic books. Between then and now, they've had an interesting Kylo Ren comic book arc that was really good. So I could see them drawing from that and making because like you've seen in this show, they can take the basis of a comic book storyline and just kind of like do their own thing with it, like they did with Kanan.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to see them take like a Kylo Ren rise of Kylo Ren type storyline and tell that in the animated form. That would be great for me. Yeah, I like that a lot because, like I said in my answer, I think the sequels are in a point now where an animated show could come in and show the good that is there, and similar to the prequels, make us kind of just forget the bad a little bit and overlook it or see the charm in it. I go back and I watch the prequels now, and all the problems are still there. The dialogue is pretty bad, the effects can be pretty bad, but all that in the end added up to a bit more charming than it was just because of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So I'd be excited to see them give some time to those characters here in the animated form.
And one character or one thing we talked about earlier before we go to animated characters we'd like to see in live action is you name dropped Quinlan Voss, meaning Dryden Voss, when you meant to say Dryden Voss. I think he'd be great to pop up in Bad Batch now that we know he survived Order 66. I think him, popping up in an episode would be pretty good.
Yeah, I liked him a lot. He was one of the fun characters. He had a really good episode of Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of an embodiment of how you can take a character that's like a non-character. Yeah. Like he has a background shot in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, he's an extra in the Phantom Menace.
They went from an extra that looked cool to a developed character that has like a whole dynamic.
Yeah.
I think that's just a really great writing, and I would love to see him come back.
Yeah. All right. Is there any animated characters you'd like to see move to live action? Because I have 2.
I'm gonna steal one that I think you probably would mention, and I think Hondo would be a great live action appearance. Yeah. When you go to I know I talked about Galaxy Edge 100 times on the show, but it comes up every episode. I feel like this has a Galaxy Edge kind of vibe to it in the show, but Hondo's a big presence in the Galaxy's Edge park. He has an animatronic that you can interact with, and when you're waiting in line and the ride, they have those characters that come on the speaker sometimes and like tell you the rules and that kind of stuff, and Hondo comes up and tells you that kind of stuff. So he's very present. You tell he's around in the sequel era, so we know that he makes it all the way to the sequel era. Of course, Hondo would, he seems like the character that would always weasel his way out of death for, 100 years at this point. He's going to be around. Yeah. So I would love to see him make an appearance. I would assume he's a guy who would, if you had me guess, I would have thought he'd be a Mando by now. But they're making us wait a little bit. Season 3, I'd have to imagine maybe Book of Boba Fett. Yeah. But now that we've gotten past the Grogu plot, maybe it's time for a Hondo appearance. It could be a good way to get Din Djarin some work. Maybe he get some jobs from Hondo. Maybe now that he's moving on to a different section of the galaxy, who knows? But I think Hondo will be a good live action appearance. Yeah,
Hondo is kind of my number 1 pick, and then if you don't have anyone else, my number 2 pick would be very easy to get. Love to see him in the Ahsoka show, and that's Captain Rex in live action.
That would be good. I think for sure the Ahsoka show is where you're gonna get. Now that you mention it, I feel like that's almost like a guarantee. They already
Mm,
have Tamora Morrison like on the
mm,
payroll,
yeah,
So how hard would it be to be like, okay, this week you're filming for Ahsoka, and
yeah.
this week you're filming for Boba Fett, and he's like, okay, whatever, pay me the paychecks, and I'll just say the line.
As long as the check's clear, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
He's like, what's the difference between Boba Fett and Rex? Rex is like has happiness in his life and smiles occasionally. Got it.
That'll be a good pull. I think a lot of the clones were such a minimal presence in the. I mean, they were there, but they weren't developed really at all in
Yeah.
the prequels. They were just kind of CG characters. So I would like to see some clone appearances in these, especially the Ahsoka show. I think that's the place to do it. But maybe even the Obi-Wan show, I could see him running into like a rundown Captain Rex somewhere. That could be an interesting development.
Yeah, maybe Rex is like doesn't. I mean, he might be a little too old, but I guess you could have aged Tamora Morrison down a little bit with makeup. But have him, have a spark back in his life and be the reason he goes and tries to find Wolf and Gregor and those guys that we know he's been hanging out with and when we find him in Rebels.
Yeah, I think a clone appearance would be great. I think Captain Rex is the one to do it because he's like the clone people know.
Yeah.
Anybody else you'd like to see? Even small characters?
I'm trying to think. So many of them. I've like Han Solo. Depending on how far Bad Batch goes, it'd be kind of interesting to see. But like, if they'd have to have a couple time jumps and all that. Like right now, there's no spot where I could see a animated Han Solo popping in because it's kind of weird that like, I mean, his story in Star Wars really does kind of kick off with like his movie and then A New Hope, but I think it would be kind of cool to see him pop in somewhere.
I would love it if they brought Alden Ehrenreich back.
Yeah, we've technically had Luke if you count him running in the distance in Rebels. We had Princess Leia in Rebels, but we haven't had Han yet, so I think that would be kind of.
Yeah, we haven't had Han of the big three. He's the only one who hasn't had at least the tiniest animated appearance.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, I mean, with Clone Wars and stuff and Rebels and Resistance, pretty much a lot of the live action characters have had animated appearances.
Yeah, you wouldn't think about it, but this franchise essentially has done a really good job of bringing in characters that had the potential to be great in movies, but didn't really get the depth that they could have gotten. And I think there's also some easy answers if you're looking for animated characters to cross over, like Thrawn. You could have said Thrawn, but I think there's a guarantee he's going to be in Ahsoka.
Yeah, like it's hard, like when they've basically all but said that Mina Massoud is going to play Ezra in, I assume, the Ahsoka show. But like even like, okay, sure, Hera and Sabine would be fine. But like Kanan, like his story, as far as that needs to be told, has been told. Like, I wouldn't hate like maybe seeing him have a guest appearance in like Jedi Fallen Order 2. I think that'd be the best spot to see Kanan again. But like he essentially hides the fact that he's a Jedi and is just like a drunk at a bar until Hera finds him like a few months before Rebel starts. Like,
yeah, I think if you're gonna have him show up, you have him as like that drunk at the bar. Maybe a reluctant hero for one little tiny thing where he does the right thing, but it'd be hard to work that into his arc.
Like even just not even a big moment, but like, what's his fate? The main guy in Fallen Order. I can't remember his name, the character's name, but he's like
Cal something.
Cal Kestis.
Yes.
Yeah, Cal Kestis is at a bar and he needs like someone to pilot him, and he finds Kanan Jarrus and he like senses the Force in him, and Kanan's like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. If I'm Force sensitive, Jedi never found me, or whatever the fuck.
Yep.
It's like, I don't know nothing about the Force and I don't know nothing about no Jedi, and just kind of hides it.
Another character I think would be a fun live action appearance is an Inquisitor of any kind.
Oh,
but
yeah,
the Grand
I was
Inquisitor
thinking that too.
would be cool. But
So one of the things that people have not like people have theorized, but we've never really got is we don't know who the first Inquisitor is because you have like second brother and like seventh sister and all that. So there's some speculation like what if it's essentially Galen Merrick from the Star Wars Force Unleashed game that I didn't play that was like voiced and like basically motion captured by Sam Witwer, and I think that'd be kind of cool to bring him in that way. Of like, okay, we've kind of changed canon around a little bit. Maybe he's not as powerful, but he was the first Inquisitor.
That would be cool. It'd be a nice connection because they do like bringing in Legends stuff to just kind of the little sprinkle,
Yeah.
to say, oh look, we still care about you guys. We know you like this stuff, so here's a little bit of
Yeah,
a little bit of snack for you.
yeah. So you can be like, there's the Grand Inquisitor, and then there's the first brother, who is Galen Merrick. And I think that's something you could potentially have in the Bad Batch, is he could, show up as an antagonist in the Bad Batch.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. We get like an Inquisitor set up in the show because they're looking for Omega, they're looking for Force sensitive kids, and the next logical step from that is okay, here are the Inquisitors.
All right. Any more characters that you'd like to see pop up in something else?
That's all I've really got for you. I think those would be pretty fun. Cad Bane could be a good live action appearance. Just a little fun. Because when I think about it, I think, okay, some of these characters, no, they're not going to give me like a whole show of Cad Bane, but maybe he gets an episode of Mandalorian or something like that. Because that could be a fun kind of thing. Like, oh, they were in the Clone Wars, now they're in Mando. And it's like that one is graduating from animated to live action, similar to like Ahsoka did and Katie Sackhoff's character did. Where they're popular in the animated form, so they get this stamp of approval by being added into the live action universe.
One character I was gonna say that's technically appeared in both animation and live action, but Boba Fett. I'd love for him to appear in the Bad Batch as like this clone, and they're like, "Oh, were you a deserter?" And he's like, "No, I was." Like basically him being like, "I'm not like you."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Boba Fett in, his armor and all that showing up in Bad Batch could be cool.
Yeah, I'm looking the other direction. I want a clone in the Book of Boba Fett where I can have that conversation of Boba Fett meeting a clone that's, what would that emotional journey be like for Boba Fett as a character? He's meeting this person who's essentially his brother. They share the same DNA in all forms, really. But
yeah, I could definitely see Captain Rex, and because you could have, to cut down on CGI, you could have, for most of it, have Boba Fett in his armor, and then Tamura Morrison as Captain Rex with no armor. Well, like, no helmet on. And then for, like, a few quick moments, have him take his helmet off, and you can see both of their faces at the same time.
I would like that. She shows up in some Tatooine bar or something, and the bartender just happens to be a clone. That's my kind of idea. It's like, yeah, I'm this clone who deserted, or I got away from Order 66, whatever you want to go with, and I've just been living out here on Tatooine,
Yeah. And he says, "Hello, my name's Cut LaQuain."
Yep, we get that crossover.
Yep. All right. So I think we've kind of broke down this episode. We've talked about, characters we'd like to see. Any final thoughts you want to say to the people?
No final thoughts. Happy birthday to The Empire Strikes Back. I think it's 41 years today that we've got that movie, the movie that totally changed Star Wars and really made it into what it is. So shout out to Empire. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the show. Good episode this week. Not one that I'm going to necessarily remember by the end of the season, I don't think. But it was a good time, and I'm excited to see what the next couple episodes are like and what the pacing is going to be like for this.
Yeah, I think it depends. If Fennec Shand comes back 2 or 3 times, we'll remember it as the episode where Fennec Shand debuted. But if she comes back once and it's like the season finale, it'll be more like, oh yeah, she was in an earlier episode, wasn't she? But yeah. Alright. So, yeah, have a nice night or day or whenever you're watching this. Come back next Friday, 7:30. We stream live on Twitch. Twitch.tv/moviechangeup. Have a nice night.